26th of April 1986, the Chernobyl disaster occurred by chain reaction of explosions in the fourth reactor. Seconds after explosion, large cloud rose into sky and large amount of radioactive material mixed into atmosphere. With complete destruction of fourth reactor, huge fire broke out in the nuclear power plant.
На главном корпусе, третий, четвертый, между третьим и четвертым. А там люди есть? Да. Поднимай на состав. Поднимай.
Soviet Union tried to hide this disaster by announcing death of only 2 employees in the explosion. However, 2 days later, when abnormal radioactivity was detected in Sweden, hidden facts and magnitude of the incident were revealed. Although it can be said that the incident in the Chernobyl affected people more economically or politically because agricultural areas were contaminated, animals were destroyed, or international relationships were disrupted, what was really affected was people's social life, mental health, and relationships.
First, let's talk about the political effects of the disaster. After the explosion in Chernobyl, the Soviet Union tried to cover up the incident, reducing citizens' trust in the government. Public riots began. People were angry about the situation and began to question the communist regime. At a time when unrest was at its peak in the country, Mikhail Gorbachev began to gain attention with his ideas about requirement of openness and transparency in government institutions. With the increasing interest, Gorbachev became the head of the Union and made reforms that accelerated the collapse of the Soviet Union. Thus, Chernobyl disaster caused the old regime to change and facilitate disruption of Soviet Union. Incident affected not only domestic but also international relations. Tension between East and West increased, with the West accusing the Soviet Union lack of trustworthiness and safety, while the Soviet Union said the West was using the tragedy to gain political advantage. This tension exacerbated the Cold War and East and West became more hostile. Besides the negative political effects of the tragedy, countries also changed their nuclear safety protocols and international atomic energy agencies by helping information exchange and providing technical assistance between states. Also, anti-nuclear movements began in many countries, including Europe. Because of these movements, countries changed their energy policies and started to use renewable energies. It is obvious that the Chernobyl disaster had important political consequences, but Chernobyl left its biggest scar on the citizens living there, on their mental health, social lives, and relationships.
Many people living near Chernobyl, especially those in Pripyat, 135,000 people had to be evacuated from their homes and continue their lives as refugees in other cities and countries. Being a refugee for a long time, the disruption of the social network, the traumas and psychological problems they experienced after the disaster negatively affected their social lives. People exposed to radiation were stigmatized, discriminated, and isolated from social life. They constantly felt alone and helpless, and it became very difficult for affected people to get an education, find a job, or find a spouse, since other people were afraid of being contaminated. Also, many of them experienced long-term health problems like cancer or birth defects. Their mental health also negatively affected. Most of them experienced trauma, depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. My name is Vladimir Putin. I was one of the scientists working at the Chernobyl plant power. When the reactor exploded, the resulting radioactive fallout has been estimated as equivalent to that of 200 of nuclear bombs dropped on Hiroshima. I heard that explosion sound in my nightmares every night, and I could not adapt myself to normal life. I had to quit my job, left my neighbors and family, and migrated to Europe. I was pregnant when the incident occurred, and the child had disorders of speech, cognitive skills and low IQ when he was born due to the high doses of radiation. Since I could not cope with the difficulties in poverty, I sent the child to orphanage, as most families did in that time. I was diagnosed with the post-traumatic disorder. No matter how much medication I used, I could not erase that day from my memory, and my mental health disrupted due to its effect. According to the research, there is an increase in suicidal tendencies of affected people because of their mental problems. In another study, a high rate of trauma was observed in the children of people affected by Chernobyl, which suggested that mental problems could be genetically transmitted. In addition, since people affected by Chernobyl suffered economically due to contaminated agricultural areas, these financial difficulties increased family fights and disrupted family relationships, which demonstrate that Chernobyl survivors were negatively affected not only within themselves, but also in their relationship with their families and friends.
As a result, the explosion that occurred in the Chernobyl nuclear power plant was not a coincidence but negligence, because the Soviet Union ignored safety protocols to keep the budget low, knowing that water graphite reactors were risky for health and were prone to heating up quickly. Although this disaster put Soviet Union in a politically difficult situation, it mainly caused the entire social lives of the citizens to change and to experience health problems for the rest of their lives.